Coming up on Talking Points, Syracuse University refuses to sign a higher education compact from the Trump administration, what the White House is demanding.
Plus, with Election Day just over a week away, candidates in New York City are making their final appeal to voters.
And our neighbors to the north are launching an ad campaign against American tariffs. Hear how the Trump administration is retaliating when Talking Points starts right now. Good evening and welcome into Talking Points. I'm Ben Bascuk.
And I'm Alex Burstein. Responses from university presidents have ranged from forceful rejections to silence in the week since the White House asked 9 prominent campuses to make sweeping policy changes.
The demand adjusts to the Trump administration's agenda in exchange for preferential access to federal funds and programs. Recently, President Trump opened the compact to all higher education institutions. Talking Points analyst Danielle Blinn is here with Syracuse University's response. Danielle?
Yeah, Ben and Alex, last week Syracuse University announced it would not sign President Donald Trump's higher education compact. After none of the original universities signed the document, it was later sent to all higher education institutions across the country. The document asked universities to agree to certain conditions in return for better treatment when it comes to federal funding. One of the things the compact asked for in return was reinstituting standardized testing for admissions in place of universities looking at sex, ethnicity, political views, or religion. It also required that institutions maintain, quote, neutrality at all levels of their administration and allow for a broad spectrum of political ideologies from faculty members. Chancellor Kent Syverud spoke about the compact at a recent University Senate meeting. Syverud said the university would not agree to the compact in, quote, its current form. The chancellor said any changes to this decision would require a conversation with the Board of Trustees. He continued by saying, quote, there are parts of the compact that are sensible, including, for example, related to veterans and military-connected students. And I know some universities, not Syracuse, are meeting with the White House on the compact.
Well, Danielle, pretty confident answer there from the chancellor, but do you see any chance Syracuse would eventually sign on to this deal if it was worded in a different way?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think based off of Syverud's statement, there's not going to be any changes, at least in this next term while he is still the chancellor. I think the university has other issues they're focusing on, including this new chancellor search. And as a private institution, they rely less on federal funding, so they can afford to kind of have this delay and not have to rely much on the federal funding that Trump is threatening to take away from these institutions if they don't sign it. And they don't need that preferential treatment.
Well, Danielle, on the admissions front, this sounds a lot like the Trump administration is just doubling down on affirmative action, which the Supreme Court already deemed illegal in 2023. What part of this compact is objectionable from the Democratic perspective?
You know, I think it's just generally the chance of losing academic freedom, because you're right, a lot of the things they talk about is that they don't want affirmative action, which has already been decided that you can't do that in private institutions. So I think they're saying it's one thing to tell public institutions what they can and can't do when they rely a lot on that federal funding. It's another thing to start telling private institutions how they can start spending their money and do those sorts of things. And I think there's a worry that the Trump administration will say that any access to inside looks at universities is going to start to grow and grow. And the more access they get, the more kind of restrictive treatment there's going to be from the administration.
Thanks so much, Danielle. Well, Alex, definitely interesting, especially with a new incoming chancellor. One of the things I thought was interesting in this decision was how the chancellor said, hey, I'm on my way out. Any decisions I make now, I'm going to have to refer back to the board before those decisions go through.
And I mean, I think that's the smart decision, because when you're looking at this, these are decisions that could change not only for the next year, but the future of an institution and their entire academic policies. And when you know, okay, I'm hanging up the cleats in 6 months now, making a huge decision like that, it's an untimely move.
Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on how many decisions are made in the outgoing days of the chancellor here at Syracuse. Well, as November nears and the government shutdown, 40 million Americans are set to lose food assistance through the federal SNAP program. Visiting the program's page on the Department of Agriculture website now displays a banner saying, quote, bottom line, the well has run dry. At this time, there will be no benefits issued November 1st. We are approaching an inflection point for Senate Democrats. They can continue to hold out for health care for illegal aliens and gender mutilation procedures, or reopen the government so mothers, babies, and the most vulnerable among us can receive critical nutrition assistance, end quote.
Democrats responded to the message with Congresswoman Angie Craig and Rosa DeLauro drafting a joint statement calling out the cuts as, quote, perhaps the most cruel and unlawful offense the Trump administration has perpetrated yet. Well, after a quick break, the Trump administration reveals how it's funding the $300 million White House renovation. Stay with us.
Everybody has a dream. Mine was to see the ocean. And with a little help, I made it.
Women are bad with money.
It's what the world's been saying for centuries. But now,
we've got something to say.
Save it. Save the old-fashioned advice, the empty excuses. It's all worthless, unlike us.
To our fellow females, it is time to save ourselves by saving our money.
Contributing to our futures, investing in our independence.
Until we're no longer 80%
more likely than men to live in poverty in retirement.
So again, we say to that, save it.
The falsehoods, the feelings of fault, then the funds.
Learn how to save for your retirement at wesaysaveit.org.
While there are 3 candidates on this stage, you will hear only 2 messages. My opponents, who spend more time trying to convince the other to drop out than actually proposing their own policies, will speak only of the past, because that's all that they know. I am the sole candidate running with a vision for the future of this city.
3 candidates, 2 messages. That was New York City mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani making his opening statement during the mayoral debate. Mamdani is currently the front-runner, claiming his opponents live in the past. Here to break down the debate is Talking Points analyst Peter Barry. Peter?
Hey, Ben, it's great to be on tonight. On Wednesday, the 3 New York City mayoral candidates made their final pitch to voters during the final debate. With Election Day being 8 days away, they highlighted key issues facing New Yorkers, such as the affordability crisis, law and order, and immigration in the Trump administration. But the candidates also did not shy away from taking shots at one another. Coming off a 13-point win from the June primary, the Democratic nominee, Zohran Mamdani, emphasized his policies to make life more affordable for 8 million New Yorkers and how he would freeze the rent for New Yorkers living in rent-stabilized apartments.
What we need to do is ensure that next year is not the same. And we are going to do that by building the housing necessary such that New Yorkers are not priced out of this city or forced to live in shelters. And that's why my campaign is going to deliver 200,000 new affordable homes across the 5 boroughs, all while freezing the rent for more than 2 million rent-stabilized tenants.
The main competitor for Mamdani is former Governor Andrew Cuomo, who's running on an independent line. He's championing his previous experience and how he led New York through the COVID pandemic.
The state allocates funding for localities, and I allocated more funding for housing than any governor in the history of the state of New York. All right? I did things. You have never had a job. You've never accomplished anything.
Republican Curtis Siwa highlight how workers would be harmed through a $30 minimum wage raise, saying billionaires would have more pull in New York than just elections.
So Zohran Mamdani deals with fantasy, not reality. Look at all the Uber drivers. Look at all the taxi drivers, the Lyft drivers. They will now have driverless cars. That's what they're pushing. AI that's going to be wiping out so many jobs, especially for young men and women.
Peter, welcome to the desk. Well, like Mamdani said, 3 candidates, two people really on the stage going at each other. What pinholes did you see in this debate of these candidates poking holes in policy platforms or statutes? How did that look?
This is more of a 2-on-1 debate. They were kind of attacking Cuomo. Siwa and Mamdani agree and disagree on a lot of things. But the one thing they do agree on is the Cuomo hate. They were attacking Cuomo during the cross-examining section. That Mamdani asked him a question about the sexual allegations he was facing, which eventually led to his resignation in August 13th of 2021.
Mr. Cuomo, in 2021, 13 different women who worked in your administration credibly accused you of sexual harassment. What do you say to the 13 women that you sexually harassed?
The cases were dropped, right? You know that as a fact. So everything you just stated, you just said was a misstatement, which we're accustomed to from you.
Everything that I stated was a misstatement?
Yes, because the cases were dropped.
It didn't just stop at Mamdani attacking Cuomo. Siwa was also attacking Cuomo about his resignation, saying that he didn't leave voluntarily. He more just left the state of New York.
And Peter, this was only one part of kind of a huge week in this race. I mean, we've seen record numbers of early voters. We also had the big endorsement, Eric Adams putting his support behind Andrew Cuomo. But the polls are still really strongly in favor of Mamdani. Is there anything that could really sway this election?
No, I don't think anything is going to sway this election. There's a bunch of polls out there that have Mamdani up double digits. I want to take a quick look at a Suffolk University poll that had Mamdani up 44% to Andrew Cuomo at 34%, and Siwa is at 11%. That's why Andrew Cuomo is so adamant on having Siwa drop out of this race. He really wants to garner these Republican voters, but there's no guarantee that they would endorse Andrew Cuomo or go out and vote for him. I know Andrew Cuomo just had a key endorsement in this race with Eric Adams, but I don't know if he will necessarily swing the needle here.
Forgive me if I'm wrong, but when they were asked who would accept the endorsement of Eric Adams, he was the only one to raise his hand. I mean, how much of an endorsement does it mean coming from an official, like you said, like Eric Adams, who's kind of fallen out of the limelight in a negative way?
Just 7 weeks ago, Adams was calling Cuomo a snake and a liar, but I don't see Eric Adams having any influence. He was polling at like 9% right before he dropped out. He's kind of a Trump puppet, and now he's kind of taking his charges away rather than just helping anyone out in this race.
Really surprising to see him kind of turn into this Trump puppet versus what we saw 4 years ago when he first came into office. But, you know, that's what will happen when you're in the biggest city in the U.S.
Yeah. We talked about a little bit earlier some of these platform points, especially coming from Mamdani, things that are going to be needed to accomplish in the state legislature in Albany with the work of Governor Hochul. What does an endorsement like that mean? And does it make any of his platform, Mamdani's platform, more feasible or reality?
Well, Hochul was kind of late to the endorsement party. She endorsed him about a month ago. But I don't see how Hochul could really help Mamdani in the polls. But I see her kind of endorsing some of her policies. She is very adamant about not raising taxes in the state. The state budget is around $254 billion, with the New York City budget being around $116 billion. But Mamdani could fulfill some of his promises. He could freeze the rent with appointed board members, but I don't know if Hochul will be on board with that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Peter. We'll definitely keep an eye on Hochul, especially because she has an election coming up as well. Well, the White House revealed the list of donors funding President Trump's multi-million-dollar ballroom. The president of crypto platform Gemini and major tech companies like Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and Meta are among those contributing. While the administration initially estimated a $200 million price tag, Trump recently said that the cost had risen to about $300 million.
Just a little change there. Well, he emphasized that the expense will, quote, be paid entirely by me and some friends. He's referring to his donors. Court documents also revealed that YouTube will contribute $22 million to the project. That's part of a settlement over the suspension of Trump's YouTube account following the January 6th riot. Ben, I can't believe it's a little change, $200 million to $300 million.
Just a little bit there.
But I mean, it's possible because you look at these companies, and I think this is something that Democrats should be a little worried of. You have pretty much all the big names in AI and all the big names in technology that are putting some form of support behind this White House.
Yeah, and it's a sector that this White House has targeted so much, brokering that NVIDIA deal, gaining 15% on revenue, in exchange letting them sell chips overseas, kind of giving them segues with these tariffs and paths to still make income on the corporate level. A lot of these companies, I mean, Mag 7 companies, Alex, we have Microsoft, we have Google on there for Alphabet, but that was a settlement he reached with that $22 million coming from Google-owned YouTube. So he's also kind of in this retribution sense, having these companies pay him back by funding a piece of his legacy.
It's also interesting, he said in a press conference that he's going to have the military involved, and they're not on this list, but you're looking at Lockheed Martin and other big military companies getting involved with this. So he's really trying to get a ton of different industries to support him on this very interesting endeavor.
Yeah, definitely a shocking sight to see the East Wing being torn down, but many precedents have done this before. This one not funded by the American taxpayer, rather by private interests. But still ahead, Trump's Argentina bailout poses a high cost to taxpayers, but the currency swap is stirring waters in the GOP. Stay with us.
There's one thing you can never have sex without.
It's not something you buy.
Or something you take.
In fact, there's only one way to get it.
It has to be given to you, freely.
It's consent.
Because sex without it isn't sex.
It's rape. Consent.
If you don't get it, you don't get it. It's on us to stop sexual assault.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
Someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports. It looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time.
Well, that's the beginning of an ad created by the Ottawa government, an ad causing President Trump to end all trade negotiations with long partner Canada. We bring in analyst Emma Popper to break it down. Emma?
Thanks, Ben. That's correct. This instance is just one more in a long line of tense moments between the U.S. and Canada in relation to trade and tariffs. Today, Ontario Premier Doug Ford says he will pause the advertising campaign responsible for causing President Trump to end these trade negotiations with Canada and add a further 10% tariff. The ad features President Ronald Reagan critiquing tariffs.
America's jobs and growth are at stake.
The Canadian Premier says that they achieved their goal by having the ad reach as many U.S. audiences as it can. He continued by saying that the intention of the ad was to initiate a conversation about the economy and the impact of tariffs. President Trump reacted to the ad by posting to Truth Social, saying, "Canada cheated and got caught. They fraudulently took a big buy ad saying that Ronald Reagan did not like tariffs, when actually he loved tariffs for our country and its national security." He ended by saying now they and other countries can't take advantage of the U.S. any longer. Trump also saying on Air Force One that the blame goes to the entire Canadian government.
Whether it's provincial or Canada itself, they all knew exactly what the ad was. Prime Minister knew, everybody knew. The Prime Minister knew what the end was before it went on.
Well, Emma, thanks for joining us here at the desk. And obviously, this is a big deal for both countries. But for Canada, 3/4 of their exports go to the United States. This is one of their biggest trade partners, if not their biggest. This seems like it could be disastrous for their economy.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a continuation of this, escalation that we've seen. And we see, plants and automotive, plants closing in Ottawa, where this was originated from. We're seeing, this impact affecting the, Canada very directly because of these aluminum and steel tariffs. So this is not a good thing for them to kind of be, poking and trying their luck out on this.
Yeah, I mean, definitely Canada bearing the brunt of the retaliation here. Something we talked about earlier was kind of why, from a premier's perspective, would you poke a bear, poke this American president known for retaliating against rhetoric to other countries in the form of tariffs when they're relying on the U.S. for so many goods? I mean, auto, steel, aluminum, lumber, especially a territory like Ottawa that gets a lot of those exports from the U.S.
Yeah, I think we're also seeing the, Prime Minister of Canada coming back and saying, no, we want these trade negotiations. We want this. Why are my, counterparts in the government going back on this and kind of, going at Trump in this way? And we see him kind of reeling back on it and saying, no, we want these negotiations to continue.
And you see Canada, the only G7 country right now that has not had trade negotiations with the U.S. And a lot of these countries have kind of not flipped over for Trump, but they found ways to negotiate with him. Emma, is this kind of Canada and all these other countries pointing towards, okay, it's not what we want, but we're gonna do what the U.S. needs to keep our trade going?
I think we're seeing a lot of that happen. We're seeing, we have to comply with this because we're the ones getting hurt in this situation. We are complying with President Trump in the United States on these fronts because that's what we have to do to, keep the people and keep the money in the pockets of these people.
Right, and we already see in Canada, I mean, a very low average rate on tariffs for Canadian goods after that trade deal, that free trade deal that Trump brokered in his first term. But to now see him come back, slap an additional 10% on those Canadian goods, it's kind of how far can we push the boundary on the Canadian side before it breaks? I mean, you can only go so far before you have a superpower like the U.S. that you can no longer rely on. And are we going to see them move some of that manufacturing in autos, in aluminum, in steel, and lumber back to Canada, which is the same mission of the Trump administration here in the U.S., Alex?
Yeah, I mean, the only problem with that's an extremely expensive endeavor.
For sure.
Obviously, these tariffs are expensive, but if you're going to be moving not one, but multiple industries across the border, I don't know who's going to pay for that.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing this damage happen, and I'm wondering, what are we going to do next? Is this, relationship that has been very strong going to be taking a turn for the worse?
And it brings up a broader discussion on the global scale of kind of isolationism. So many countries that once relied on the U.S. for certain things kind of could see the way that U.S. decisions were going. They no longer have that clarity. There's no idea about what tariffs Trump is going to lay out next week, next month, next year. And so there's this indecisiveness on the global level that they can't rely on the United States anymore for certain goods.
Yeah, not a lot of relying, but we know we can rely on Emma for a great breakdown every week. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, last week saw the 10th strike of alleged drug boats by the Trump administration amid rising tensions with Venezuela. And now the U.S. military's presence will be hard to miss for any boat in the Caribbean Sea. Just yesterday, the USS Gravely, a missile destroyer ship, docked in neighboring Trinidad and Tobago, while the USS Gerald Ford, the world's largest aircraft carrier, moved closer to the Venezuelan coast.
U.S. military officials say the move of the two warships is for training and humanitarian missions, but Venezuelan leaders allege the ship's positioning is a move by the Trump administration to continue, quote, fabricating a war that Venezuela says they will not engage in. Protesters in Trinidad and Tobago echoed those comments, adding that their island nation should not have allowed any ships to dock.
Staying in South America, President Trump is also facing backlash from some of his own party members following his $20 billion bailout for Argentina's economic crisis. Now, Trump's administration indicates there could even be more on the way.
Yeah, that bailout sparked criticism from Democrats, especially amid the government shutdown, but some Trump allies joined in as well. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene went on the Tucker Carlson show last week to push against the move.
It's a revolving door at the White House, a revolving door of foreign leaders and prime ministers and presidents, all with their hands out, demanding money and demanding attention and demanding America do this. I mean, let's take, for example, this $40 billion bailout for Argentina. That's probably one of the grossest things I've ever seen.
Strong words there from Marjorie Taylor Greene. Well, just ahead, New York State eyes redistricting following a lawsuit from voters in the city. Don't go anywhere.
They'll test you. Try to break your will. But however loud the loudness gets, however many cheese puffs may fly, you're the driver, the one in control. Stand firm. Just wait. And move only when you hear the click that says they're buckled in for the drive. Never give up till they buckle up.
Welcome to my house. Lately, not my happy place. Everybody's pretty tired of each other. The parents were not themselves. My little brothers were morphing into small creatures. The walls were closing in. Clearly a case of too much family, too close, 24/7. And there's a lot of that going around right now. If this sounds like your house, try going someplace new. YourLifeYourVoice.org. You'll find lots of ideas to help you handle the family stresses of being confined to close quarters. YourLifeYourVoice.org. It might not get you out of the house, but it could help you find a little more breathing room.
Welcome back to Talking Points. Earlier today, a lawsuit was filed on behalf of 4 New Yorkers. The lawsuit argues that the lines for the 11th Congressional District unfairly weaken Black and Latino votes in a district that covers Staten Island and part of southern Brooklyn. The district is represented by Nicole Maliotakis, the only Republican member of the Congress in New York City.
The suit argues that the combined Black and Latino population on Staten Island has grown from 11% to 30% over the past 40 years. Democrats may face an uphill battle, though, convincing a judge that the current lines are unacceptable. It was just last year that the map was redrawn and improved. This case enters New York into the national gerrymandering arms race. Rewriting the state's existing congressional districts may be one of the Democrats' best hopes of improving their chances in next year's midterm elections. And Ben, we're talking about one seat here, the only Republican seat in New York City. It almost seems like a desperation heave for the Democrats right now, who have now lost seats in multiple Republican-held states across the country. They're arguing over this one seat. It's going to take a much broader effort to get any chance back next year.
For sure. And we're kind of seeing on the national scale, Democrats trying to fight fire with fire, right? I mean, they claim Republicans are doing a lot of redistricting and gerrymandering as well. They're doing the same thing, but now openly doing it. Now, for the Democrats, the issue they're going to face is that they've had 15 years in states like California of redistricting reform, which now makes it very difficult to draw those partisan lines. So something like Proposition 50 in California, where they're trying to change some of those districts in a very gerrymandered, obvious way, it's going to be harder for them to do than it is for Republicans, let's say, in Texas.
Well, and if you even look right here in New York, the reason why this has to go through the courts to get this one seat is because of a bipartisan independent commission that is set to redraw the maps. And remember, recently, you had the Democrats trying to do a very, very pro-democratic map. It didn't pass. They were able to get a couple of extra seats. But what the Democrats tried to do is redo how the election system works, redo the drawing, and it just is now hurting them in the end.
Yeah, I mean, they really do need this push going into the midterms, and the Republicans need it too. I mean, so much of how this country is structured, the presidency can only accomplish so much without the support of Congress. Right now, we have a Republican Congress. He's able to push things through. If Democrats take control of that during the midterms, the president himself could be at jeopardy again for something like an impeachment.
And that's why the Republicans are trying so hard to get these seats. I mean, so far we have at least 7 possible seats that have leaned more Republican that were Democratic in the past across multiple seats. You mentioned Texas, you mentioned Indiana, but this has been a widespread effort. And now we're seeing at least 10 or 15 states across the Democrats and the Republicans that may have changed maps 12 months from now.
Yeah, coast to coast, we're seeing a lot of gerrymandering on both sides of the aisle, California to right here in New York. Well, that's all the time we have for you on this episode of Talking Points. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at CitrusTV News and like us on Facebook. I'm Ben Bascuk.
And I'm Alex Burstein. Have a great night, Syracuse.